Hi, welcome to Unit 1925. This is a cluster of 2 units because they're both about programs. Unit 19 is about developing and implementing service programs. Unit 25 is about supporting youth programs. Now when you do this, you'll find that there's 5 parts to it. Part 1 is analysing the need for a program. Part 2 is identifying the programs required. Part 3 is developing programs. Part 4 is implementing and monitoring programs, and Part 5 is evaluating programs. So how do we define a program? A program is a plan of actions to reach a specified outcome, or it might just be like a schedule of activities. But it's a very generic term, and it can be used to describe a huge range of different types of programs. And we look at the types of programs on the purpose of the program, the duration of the program, the location where it is, and who are the participants. We look at those 4 things. So as we look at the purpose of programs in boarding, we have 4 goals. The first is to keep students interested, engaged and involved in all of the activities. The second is to support their holistic development, so that's all their life skills as they learn and grow and mature. The third is to support their needs, their individual or specific needs. And the fourth is to enable students to contribute to the broader community or even back to their own hostel or boarding residence. So let's talk about the duration of a program in boarding. A program can go for a whole year, such as an annual program, or a program might just go for a shorter period of time, for a month or 5 weeks. So Caulfield Grammar take their Year 9 students to Nanjing every year for 5 weeks in a cultural immersion program. Marara Christian College, Darwin, they take their Year 10 students on a road trip, like a coming of age road trip in Year 10, and I know students really look forward to this program. And they go down to the snow and to the capital cities on this road trip. Or you might have a shorter program. So you might have a program that goes every Friday afternoon for a term, such as a sporting program, a soccer program, something like that. It might even be quite short, a program which is, say, 3 hours or 2 hours. So we've looked at the purpose of programs, we've looked at the duration of programs, and then the location. So the location is most likely going to be at your boarding residence, but it could also be in your local area, could be out of your town, even interstate or overseas. So there's lots of variations for the location of your program. And what about the participants? The participants are most likely to be your students. So it could be the whole student group, or it might be just a part of the group, a small part, so the music program or the soccer students, etc. Or it might even be a program for a single student. We travel around Australia into some overseas places and we see lots of different boarding programs, and we see some great programs. One of these places that we go to is NRL Cowboys House in Townsville, and they have some great programs there. And we want to look today at the different types of programs by looking at some of the programs that Cowboys House provide. And I've got their yearbook here from 2018, and there's lots of different programs in here, so let's have a look. So looking at the different programs that NRL Cowboys House offer, you've got educational programs such as their homework and tutoring program, where over 40 people are involved in tutoring students. You've got the development programs such as Army Cadets and Eat, Cook and Live. Then you've got cultural programs such as Dream Time at the G, reconciliation programs, the Reconciliation Cruise and Deadly Ditch. And then you've got sport such as sport development programs, rugby and basketball, community engagement, the Veterans Motorcycle Visit, Anzac Day March, and then arts, visit to the theatre and other art programs, and excursions, sailing in the Coral Trekker, the Magnetic Island Visit, etc. So we looked at all the different types of programs, and now we want to try and analyse the need for a program. So we want to work out, how do we analyse the need for a program in boarding? And the first thing you do is you look at the different objectives that you've got for the young people who are in your boarding program. We've looked at these objectives before,
And these objectives will guide us as we analyse the need for a program. So first and foremost, these objectives must be addressed as we analyse the need for a program.
So where do we start? First of all, we look at last year's program and work out, have we got the same students or the same demographic? Have we got the same budget, same locations? Probably will have. And so you can use last year's program. So here is a program from last year, and you can have a look at it, see what worked, and see what you want to do again. And you might think some things you can't do because maybe people are not available, but you can go through the program and work out what parts you can use again. It's a part of identifying the needs and the gaps, the kind of programs that we're going to need for boarding. We're going to involve stakeholders, and so we're going to be talking to other people who are stakeholders in the boarding program. They'll help us make decisions about this, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, hang on, I already do all of this. And it is true that most boarding organisations do this in an ad hoc or organic kind of way, that these things just evolve. But this program sets out an intentional, organised process for developing programs. So our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are going to be our governing body or our structure, our authority structure. It's going to be other boarding staff, school staff, parents, students, and then you might have external stakeholders such as people like health or mental health people in your area, sporting bodies, music groups, all of these sort of people who are external stakeholders. And question 2 on your assessment asks, who are the stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders? So I want to just talk about governance for a moment. In a non-government school, you're most likely going to have a board of directors or a board of board members who provide the governance, and then you'll have your head of boarding or a CEO who provides the leadership. In a government boarding residence or boarding school, it's going to be different, where you have a head of boarding or a CEO, but above them will be lots of layers of people who are involved, all the way up to the minister. So it's quite different between government and non-government boarding residences. Okay, so how do we actually engage these stakeholders? How do we get these stakeholders involved? And this is question 3. Typically, it's through meetings, interviews, questions, questionnaires, feedback process, and then you'll also have anecdotal or ad hoc type processes where somebody's emailed you about something or somebody's made a comment, somebody's texted you, and you can use those comments to inform your program. Students are stakeholders, and we want to look at how we involve students. What do we do to involve students in the process? It can be a very intentional process of involving students. So it might be meetings or focus groups to involve students in the program, or it could be more general, where you've got student councils or other representatives of students, where you're getting regular feedback, where you're getting feedback on specific events or even exit feedback when students leave, complaint forms, and then ad hoc or anecdotal comments. You could even organise for digital feedback, so that could be feedback apps or online surveys, and some organisations have their own purpose-built apps. Question 4 in the assessment asks, in your annual program, how do you get students to contribute to? So we want to involve students, and we have some strategies for involving students. I've got 7 strategies here. The first of these is to develop your involvement and feedback strategies carefully. Work out what information you require and what questions you need to ask. Number 2 is to make the process very accessible for students. Number 3 is to develop a culture of involvement and feedback so that students know their contributions are valued and that you're modelling how to effectively give and receive feedback. Number 4 is to express to students that the program will only benefit from their involvement. The program will improve because of honest feedback. Their feedback is valued and it's important. Number 5, we need to accept that sometimes in evaluation students' feedback will not always be a mature response or a fair response, and it's often affected by the relationship with the students, so don't take the feedback personally. Number 6 is, after collecting the feedback, share the findings with students, and this engages the students and keeps them interested. Number 7 is that frequent, quick, informal questions are easier for students, and it gets students more comfortable to provide that feedback. So we've got question 5. Question 5 asks 4 strategies that you see most important, and then it also asks for you to reflect and explain how well your residence does these. So when we're looking at student involvement in programs and giving feedback to programs, there are barriers, and so let's have a look at some possible barriers to students' involvement. The first is a lack of organisation of the process, so we need to make sure that student involvement is very carefully organised. Another is a lack of available time, so make regular time for feedback and involvement. A third is the processes which are not effective. So we should only use processes which are carefully thought out, effective processes. A fourth is processes which are not student friendly, so long, tedious processes or complex processes. So use student friendly processes, focused, short and simple. Another is lack of student access to these processes, so make the programs and the process very accessible. And another is poor communication skills, so use communication skills that will work for the group. Question 6 in the assessments asks, of the 6 possible barriers, select 3 that affect your residents. Explain how you could work to overcome these. One of the purposes of developing a program is to meet the needs of a student. So this could be specific needs of an individual student or the needs of a student group. So we're looking at things like education needs, so that's tutoring, homework programs, literacy and any education support that you would provide to the student in boarding. Behavioural needs, so addressing poor behaviour, bullying and so on. Social, emotional needs, self-esteem, etc. Disabilities, understanding disabilities and knowing how to talk to people with disabilities, how to help people if they require help or will accept help. Health, knowing about our health, our sexual health, things like diabetes and other things that affect health. Culture and identity needs, so this is respect for other cultures. Home and family needs, so making sure the students have plenty of opportunity to contact parents, to send material home, photos home, etc. So out of balance needs, and so these would be things like gaming, different things like that where students' lives can get out of balance. And then recreation needs, and students will have all kinds of needs for recreation, interests, hobbies, etc. Okay, question 7 asks, the notes list 9 possible needs of students. If you're analysing the requirements for your annual program, which of these would you address first? When we're looking at students' needs, can we meet all of the student needs all the time? And the answer clearly is no, we can't, it's impossible. So how do we prioritise? We prioritise by the significance of the need. How significant is the need? If it's a health need, an urgent health need will be very significant. There are some important educational needs. And this may come before a student's need for a recreational hobby such as horse riding. You'll find that some of these needs are more significant. Then of course your organisation's resources, what have you got in the way of resources, and your organisation policies and procedures. And question 8 asks, list 3 factors that will help us prioritise needs. So question 8 lists 3 factors that will help us prioritise needs. Students' needs do change, and so how can we keep on top of these changing needs? They're not going to be the same all the time. Question 8 asks, how can you be aware of a student's changing needs? And there's 4 ways in which we can be aware of a student's changing needs. The first is effective, open communication and trust. That's both with the students and with parents and also with co-workers, of course. And that sort of communication will help you ascertain student needs. Number 2 is active supervision and monitoring of students, moving around, monitoring students and just becoming aware of their needs. 3 is effective pastoral care programs, good communication processes for identifying needs in that program. And the 4th is individual case management for specific needs of young people. When you're analysing the need for a program, it's always useful to network and consult. So why is that? The first is because it helps us to avoid duplication of services, and the second is it helps us to know all the different services and other providers who can add to our program and help meet the various needs of our students. And so question 10 asks, why is it useful to network and consult? So we've come to the end of Unit 1925, and I just want to talk to you about Assessment 19.2 because this unit requires you to set up, devise, put together, implement and evaluate a program, a real program. It requires you to do that. And Assessment 19.2 is about that. And the very first part of that is about analysing the need for a program. You need to show evidence so you have actually analysed the need for a program. So there's 2 ways of doing this. You can look at a program you've done in the past and use a program that you've done in the past, but you actually have to have evidence that you've done it. Or you can go through and devise a new program as we're going through this material in this unit. So either way, you can do either one of those 2, but you will need to talk to the trainers about it. So please phone us up, email us, talk to us about how you're going to do this assessment. Thank you.